heal PTSD? Here's a video on how to heal PTSD. Welcome back, and if you don't know me already, my name is Magnolia. I'm a licensed clinical social worker supervisor, a CSAT, a CMAT, clinical mental health nutritionist, lots of things, certified in EMDR. If you want more information, go ahead and look down below, right? Okay, so back to our scheduled content for today. We have 4 prongs to our approach and treatment, right? We have bio, psycho, social, spiritual. And in shamanism and in Native American medicine, we have the 4 directions, northeast, southwest, and essentially they do represent each of those components of the biopsychosocial spiritual wheel. With biological, we want to address the biological systems of the person, right? The psychological component, so psycho for short, the key here is to find psychological safety. Definitely, I recommend finding a therapist that's a PTSD specialist, especially if you have complex PTSD, honestly. And the reason why I didn't say trauma-informed from the jump is because everybody calls themselves trauma-informed for the most part at this point in time. That doesn't mean that they're good at working with trauma. That doesn't mean they're informed. That doesn't mean that they work from the bottom up. It doesn't mean any of these things. So yes, I recommend going to a PTSD specialist. Side note, I've studied PTSD for 27 years. I've been an expert for 7 years. So keep an eye out on our curriculum for any therapists here watching. And if you're a client of a therapist, feel free to send them our way to get this extra training. Okay. And so the psychological component of things really helps you it helps you figure out why you do what it is that you do. Helps you figure out your patterns and then how to rewire your thinking and things like that, because as many of you know, like really our minds can be a prison, right? That's a psychological component. Then we have social. We need social safety to be emotionally and psychologically safe. Scratch that. Well, is that true? Yeah, I think both are true. We need social safety to be emotionally and psychologically safe. We also need to be emotionally and psychologically safe in order to experience social safety. It's a bidirectional relationship there. And this can be a really tricky one. I know it's really easy, right? So here's what happens, okay? When we're functioning well and things are good, we're great, we're social, we're active and things like that. I personally have another unpopular opinion here where I don't think people are naturally introverts or extroverts. I think everyone is naturally an extrovert. Though when things are in the way, like you have a lot of inflammation, things like that, or you don't have the social skills, or you have things like autism. Autism is really complex, and we'll get videos out there on this topic, I promise. Right? But there are things that you can do even despite having these setbacks that can really support you, right? Or hinder you, in all honesty. That said, it is something that I believe, that we're all naturally social creatures because that's how we are wired. We're wired for connection. And so as much as we want to connect, sidetrack. Cool. When we're good, we're social. We want to be open. We want to hang out with people. We want to make appointments and things like that. When we are more anxious and stressed, we are hyper aroused, right? There's a lot going on. We're flighty and things like that. So maybe we push connection away. Maybe we have things like overstimulation, auditory, physical, and things like that. And that moves us a bit away from connection because the body's like, hey, something's going on. Like, I got to get going, right? Also, this is what our fight response looks like. I'm talking polyvagal theory here. This is the middle rung of the polyvagal ladder. And then if that continues on for too long here, where we're anxious, or the threats or the stressors or what have you, or the trauma continues for too long, then that's where it moves us into the hypo-aroused state, the collapsed state, right? It's like, oh, this is too much going on. It's depression. It's completely moving away from people. It's like I have zero interest with other people and things like that. And so yes, I feel like it's pretty obvious, like you continue suppressing your emotions and things like that, suppressing your anger, boom, your body's going to collapse. Because it's like, what's the point of paying attention to this if you're not going to be paying attention to this? Cool. let me just focus on surviving, right? When we can escape the trauma, when we can escape the stressors and things like that. At the same time, there's a piece I was going to say around autism, but I can't remember what I was going to say. Just even with the hyperarousal, just like the shutting down of systems, I think there's that parallel there with that. Okay. And social functioning ideals would be having at least one person that you feel safe with, that you can trust, even if it's a therapist, or if you're a child or a student, even a teacher that you feel looks out for you, that you have secure enough attachment with, or some kind of connection with, that you know that they care for you, things like that. At least one person. All it takes is one person to give you a semblance of some kind of safety, for you to be able to heal a little bit more. That's why with therapists, it's so imperative that you find a relationship that you feel safe with. And that can mean a lot of different things for different people. It can mean different things for yourself in different phases of your life. It's not black and white. If you have questions on that in particular, hit me in the comments, and I'm happy to answer them. Just let us know what your questions are on that. Okay. Then also setting boundaries. And of course, if you have more people than that, that's great, right? Setting boundaries is really important. We have a video right now on setting boundaries. It's by me. It's like a 2-minute video, a little over 2 minutes. And we will have more upcoming videos on that, just as an FYI. So keep an eye on that, right? And then also I recommend researching how to increase your secure attachment and how to build relationships with secure attachment. It could be triggering, I think, especially if you lean toward, okay, so attachment, just say a brief thing, right? There's secure attachment, which the research says most of us have. That is completely false. People look like they have secure attachment, but really it's the avoidant traits that look that way. That's another unpopular opinion. I'll die on that hill. Okay, I do believe a small percentage of people have secure attachment. Maybe 25% at most. But like really, I think that's being really generous. I think like 10% of people, maybe, probably less. If you factor in the entire world, especially with a lot of these traumatized cultures and toxic dynamics, absolutely. I think that's way overrepresented in the research. Anyhow, then we have anxious, primarily anxious. You lean toward people and you crave attention and connection, right? There's avoidant, where you want to push people away because of your trauma, whether it's conscious or unconscious. It's overwhelming, emotions are overwhelming and things like that, so we push people away. And then there's disorganized or fearful avoidant, which is like you vacillate between the two insecure styles, anxious and avoidant. So there's one secure, and then there's 3 different ones that are insecure. There's nothing wrong with having what you have, wherever it is that you're starting. Also, it's important to know where you're starting, because that way you can know where you're going, and then what deficits you have, what your growth edges are. If you're anxious, look that up, right? What does anxious attachment look like? Look up attachment style quizzes. That can be really helpful because it'll help you figure out where you are now. If you score secure attachment and you've never been in therapy, it's very likely, because the most common that I've seen in practice and in my life, honestly, has been fearful avoidant. I mean, like, when I say common, I mean like 95% of people that I've met, 98% of people that I've ever met, and I've met thousands of people. So, again, take it with a grain of salt. What I like to tell my staff is that the research is done by people who aren't typically clinicians, very heady, very brainy, very intelligent, though very avoidant attachment styles tend to do a lot of the research on attachment. And that really impacts the results, right? Okay. But yeah, any information that you can gather on that is going to be really helpful, because it's going to show you where it is that you're moving. And when you put where your focus goes, where your attention goes, energy grows. And so that's what we're aiming for, right? That growth component. So with that secure attachment, we want to do our best to embody it. We want to be it, and we want to find it, and we want to cultivate it in other people. I'll say, as someone who came from a more fearful avoidant background, at sometimes erring on the side of anxious, and then sometimes erring on the side of avoidant, it is very triggering to be in secure relationships. Extremely triggering. So honestly, like, it's just riddled with shame. And so that's helpful. Oh, I'll say here, I'll put a little plug. I like this therapist called Heidi Priebe. I don't know if that's how you say her last name, but Priebe. She's excellent. I love her work on shame. She's my favorite. Yes, I know about Brene Brown, but Heidi Priebe is my favorite. She really breaks it down for you, and she just comes across as extremely empathetic. Then we have the knowledge that in this social sector, as I think I mentioned earlier, this is where most of our wounds and triggers show up, because we're in relationship with people, whether we're choosing to avoid actively having relationships with people, whether we're in them by force, whether we want to have them but can't quite connect. That's important to know. Also, it's important to know that you can't connect with people. I'll rephrase. You can only connect with other people in so much as you're able to connect with yourself. And so if you don't know yourself, if you avoid yourself, if you numb out with addictions, anything like that, you're only going to get so far in connecting with other people. And really, I believe that the only medicine there is to work through it. Notice the wounds, notice the triggers, practice that mindfulness, get with the therapist. I said PTSD specialist earlier. That is correct. Also, I really like DBT because it really, really, really hits the mindfulness component. And I'll say on DBT, there are some therapists that are very structured and will give you worksheets and things like that. I'm not that therapist, right? Because I don't do well with that. I need fluidity and I need to be able to talk around things, and then for my therapist to like organize things for me and then point it out, hey, you were mindful here, things like that. So know that that is a style, and if you're a therapist you're watching too, like, just to give you that creative license, it is possible to be that type of therapist. And ultimately, of course, we just want to surround ourselves with a bunch of people who have secure attachment. It takes a while, right? Even then, it's like we can't control other people. So practicing releasing things, practicing that radical acceptance piece stemming from DBT. The interpersonal effectiveness skills, that's very helpful too. How do I communicate with other people? How do I set boundaries with other people? How do I take space for myself and different things like that? The distress tolerance skills also that come with, and emotion regulation skills. Cool. How am I going to manage my feelings, like still living among other people, with other people, etc. We can't always leave our homes, even though they're really troublesome, toxic, what have you. But how do we live nonetheless if we can't live such situations, right? Or workplaces and different things like that. So very, very highly important, because you can't really do one without the other. You could try it. You're going to white knuckle it. That's fine. It's not going to work. Notice the patterns. Work through the triggers. Feel it out. Get really triggered. It's like you have some capacity. Cool. Take a break. Next time you come back, you have more capacity. Cool. Take a break, and then more. And then eventually you're going to have a lot of capacity, and then if you're diligent enough, I know this is a radical statement, but really, if you are diligent enough around these topics, then it is possible in many cases to be able to maintain your inner peace regardless of what it is that's going on around you. Whatever political upheaval is going on, whatever fighting is going on, etc. You know, because you start to cultivate your inner sanctuary, which brings me to my final prong, which is the spiritual component of things. This is all completely meaningless if you have no life purpose and if life feels meaningless to you. In DBT, there is this component of living a life worth living, and I wholeheartedly agree. It is very imperative to do that, because otherwise all of this is for naught. So I encourage you to find meaning, whatever that is to you. Connection. Really, spirituality, sure, there's like religious pieces of things, right? There's like other ways to connect spiritually, but it's like, where do you find connection to other people? Where do you find connection to nature? Where do you find connection to life, to your life purpose, to the universe, to your higher power? Find a higher power, because doing it alone is way too much, right? And then especially as you start to go into recovery circles and things like that, it's imperative. Like, you can't hold the weight of the world on your shoulders. You're only human, right? and practicing self-compassion, practicing grace, learning to have faith and hope, and all these other things. If you want just some ideas for researching, is like, what is spirituality, spiritual words, spiritual topics, things like that. Look at it. Make notes on what you like, what you don't like. Process it with your therapist. Process it with your friends. Process it with your spiritual community. A lot of them can't hold space, and that's unfortunate, and I'm actively working on cultivating that, and we'll have more to come on that topic, though for now I'll say do your best, right? Because it's like, even if you talk to other people and then you get feedback that you disagree with, that is dissonant for you, that you don't like, then that's still information. All of these things are information. That's where mindfulness comes in. Mindfulness means practicing noticing without judgment, being present in the moment, or noticing without judgment. And so that without judgment piece is helpful, because you can judge things. You can say, oh, so-and-so's political affiliations are this. Yes, they are. Okay, cool. You let it go. Breathe, whatever, right? So-and-so's political affiliations are this, and I hate it, and this and that. Great. And I love it, and it's awesome. Great. Right? And so in working all these different prongs, you start to address all of these dynamics. Just in that short example, I'm addressing the spiritual things. Like, am I letting go? Am I practicing radical acceptance or not? There's a social component of distress tolerance. There's a psychological component of emotion regulation. And there's the component of mindfulness, which I can tie into all 4 prongs. But biologically, meaning like noticing, I'm putting my attention there. I'm using whatever senses I'm using of my 5 senses to notice something. Anyhow, there's this video, and yes, it's a lot. Yes, it can be really overwhelming. Keep in touch with us. Stick on our channel, and we'll help you through it. I plan to continue to create really solid content on these topics. It's taken me so long to find my voice and to really stand in it. And I had a mentor recently that really helped me stand in my truth and learn to command the room. And that's been a complete game changer. Don't know if I seem like I'm showing up differently here, but I feel like I am. And so here I am. And really, I just hope that you continue to love yourself, because as you love yourself, regardless of what it is that's happened to you, regardless of bad choices that you've made, right? You continue to love yourself, you commit to yourself, you heal. That's amazing. That's a big impact on the world in and of itself. And then if you continue to do that, and then you support other people in doing the same, they support other people in doing the same, you see how it's a trickle effect. And that's how we create waves of change. And so, can you heal PTSD? Absolutely. I'll recap quickly that I see how, like, the first third or fourth of my life, I was highly dissociated. Honestly, the first half of my life, extremely dissociated. Can't remember a lot of it. I see pictures and I'm like, I don't remember that at all, right? Or people will tell me memories. Like, there's a lot of levels of dissociation, because I had a lot of trauma, because there was a lot of emotions that I was having, because I had a huge lack of support, because I had a toxic family system, a lot of toxicity in my social circles, a lot of betrayal. I had a lot of betrayal in my life, right? We'll put it that way. And my early years. And then the second half of my life has gotten better. Honestly, it's been like 3/4 of my life that I was pretty highly dissociated. And this last quarter hasn't been as bad. I've been more present. I remember a lot of it. Even then, there's a lot, you know, that still was happening, because my last quarter, I was moving out of that toxicity, and I had a lot of anxiety, a lot of inflammation. I was overweight. I had major headaches. I had a lot of lower back pain. I had all the things, right? Extreme depression. I had major depression, cyclothymic disorder, I guess you'd call it. Is it dysthymic disorder? Sorry, dysthymic disorder. I had that for about 6 years, straight up depressed, and then some episodes of major depression, sure, but like so depressed. Nothing would help. At the same time, you know, I was eating a diet where I was eating a lot of MSG, a lot of saturated fats, and things of the like. Isolating, not being outside, not moving my body, all these things that I'm saying, I'm not saying it from a pedestal. I'm not saying it from, oh, this is what best practices are. No, I'm not here to kid around. I'm here to be real with you. And I'm here to say this is what works. This is what has worked for me. This is what has worked for people who actually apply it. And I know that making these changes are really difficult at times, especially if you have a lot of naysayers, especially if you have people who say, oh, you can't heal that, especially if you come from the hood like me. Right? Or, I mean, there's other communities. It's not like this is the only community, but coming from the hood or coming from people who really value you being part of the group. I'm trying not to sneeze. And so they're vested in the interest of you staying within the group and you playing small and you maintaining your lack of boundaries and different things like that and not changing. And that's okay. And ultimately you have the decision to make. Am I going to remain the way that I've been and continue to expect different results, or am I going to change, right? The definition of insanity, as they say. You don't have to change anything. You don't have to incorporate anything. You don't even have to believe me, though. If you choose to, here's a list that you can get started with. You can come back and you can reference it, and you can keep an eye out for our future videos. And we got a lot of projects in the works, right? I really hope to revolutionize post-traumatic stress treatment. If you haven't been here before, I believe that most people have elements of PTSD. Maybe they don't meet full criteria, okay, but we all have trauma. And so this applies to everybody. And even if we don't have full-blown PTSD, wow, you're lucky, for one. Cool. Secondly, like, it just is so pervasive that any of these tips will help even the average person. And so, a question that's popping up in case anyone here is asking, what if I don't have PTSD? What if I have like a different, what if I have OCD? What if I have depression? What if I have anxiety? What if I have adjustment disorder? Okay, it's still some kind of mental challenges that are going on with you, right? Some physical, emotional challenges, biological challenges that are going on with you. The mental health, I'm talking about this 4-pronged approach because it doesn't matter where you start. If you start in any one of these, it's going to impact all the other ones. Like if anyone's familiar here with yoga, right? There's different limbs of yoga. And so start anywhere. It's going to impact all the other 3. And then start with another one. Whatever's easier. Just grab whatever you can. Hold on to it. Run with it. And then it's going to impact the other ones. And it's like, I like to say that complex PTSD is like a ball of yarn. And then you just, how do you detangle a big old ball of yarn that's super tangled? Well, little by little, and you have to be really patient. You can't just like yank it. You can yank it if you want to. It's just going to tighten the ball. That's fine. You have to have patience. You got to pull it through, pull it back, pull it this way, pull it that way, right? And so forth. And then like play with the ball and loosen the different strings. And it's like, cool, now I made a mess and it's really loose, etc. And that's how it is. That's how healing is. It's not linear most of the time. And it is messy, and it is painful, and it is difficult. And the more support you have, the more knowledgeable people you have, the better you fare with this, right? I didn't mention addictions because I wasn't thinking about it at the time that I wrote my little script. Though I'll say, addictions permeate every single one of these. When we have addictions, they create and maybe are created by deficiencies in all 4 of these prongs, the biopsychosocial and spiritual prongs. And so as you start to address the addictions and address these components of these prongs, you will also yield a lot of different benefits, especially if you really dedicate yourself. So I'm closing this video. Try to close it a few times, way longer than I thought. Maybe I'll put it on our podcast. Probably I'll put it on our podcast. And I'll say that you get to dictate what kind of perspective that you're going to have. Anyone can tell you who you are. Anyone can tell you who you're not. But ultimately, you're the one who gets to subscribe. Do I believe this? Am I going to embody this? Or am I not? Do I like the stories that people are saying about me or not? Am I going to show up differently or not? You have choices. No one's forcing you to do anything. Right? Take a breath here. It's a lot. And life is fully about choices. So, what kind of person do you want to be? Thank you for watching. Check us out. Love is Healing LLC. See you next time. you.